We are going to spend a bit of time tonight on a not great topic, but we're going to reminisce in a very positive way. Unfortunately, today, it was revealed by his son that Sid Udy, also known as Sid Vicious, Sid Justice, Sycho Sid, had passed away and had been battling cancer. Since then, I've talked to a couple people that said that he did. Obviously, he kept it very quiet, kept it very close to the vest. He disclosed it to a few people. But, man, it was such a surprise. It was a shock to lose Sid. I had posted on Twitter, like, when I grew up in the 90s, it was the era of the monster heel. You had Earthquake and Yokozuna and Vader and Sid. And unfortunately, all those guys are no longer with us. But what they do leave behind are some really, really incredible memories and just some really, really great things that we can remember them by. Denise, how you feeling? We saw a tribute on WWE Raw that I thought they knocked it out of the park, and my God, on a few hours' notice, knocked it out of the park. And Michael Cole had some very kind words as well. What are your memories of Sid?
So first of all, I think that it was really nice that they did that they did the video package, because I think that stuff definitely means a lot to the family and of course to the fans, but especially the families, because it's nice to see someone that you love, you know, their life's work be acknowledged like that and remembered. And I can imagine that they've been, you know, seeing all of the love and everything coming out from everybody on social media that has been writing, you know, all of the nicest things and just like memories and clips. I mean, my whole timeline has been filled with so many like little videos and moments. Like I have so many of them right here just like lined up, because, you know, it's been nice just to like go back and just look at those things. And, you know, I think the number one thing, and I think like the first thing that I wanted to say when I thought about Sycho Sid, like the first thing that I think of to me, and it was even mentioned in the video too, was it's simple. Aura, Sean. It's aura. It's you can't teach a presence like that. And, you know, everybody talks about obviously the you know, winning the title, Madison Square Garden, Shawn Michaels, him coming out as a heel, and him being the heel and him getting like massively cheered. Yes. That's like one of the things, like I think I've watched that clip now like 100 times because it kept popping up on my timeline today. And it's things like that's why I say aura when it comes to just like putting someone over. And it's I don't know, Sean, it's sad. It sucks. And I hate every time we have to talk about, you know, losing somebody. But at the same time, it's nice to celebrate someone's life.
So I saw Sid when I was like wee little, couldn't even talk yet, but I saw Sid and I was like, oh my God, this is the perfect looking pro wrestler. Just like you saw him and you're like, there's nobody that he couldn't beat up. You know what I mean? Like, and he was so jacked, and he would wear like this big singlet back then too. One of the things that I loved about Sid is he would constantly change his name. Like he was Sid Vicious in WCW, Sid Justice in WWF, then Sycho Sid when he came back. But he was always Sid, so you always knew that it was him. And he wouldn't stay any place like that long, but then he'd get plugged right back in, and you're like, oh yeah, well, that's Sid, and he's the man, and he's a main event level talent. Even though he had never won like a world title up until he won that one from Shawn Michaels, I always looked at him as like a world title caliber guy, like as a kid. Like in my head, he was a world champion, even though he hadn't been a world champion yet. You mentioned the Shawn Michaels one. Oh, I really loved the road to get to WrestleMania 13 because they had already made the match. It was Undertaker versus Sid, and it was Steve Austin versus Bret Hart. And Steve Austin had won the Rumble, obviously. They did Final Four, all that stuff. And there was that great cage match where their opponents for WrestleMania were helping them because each man wanted to compete for the world title at WrestleMania, obviously. So you had this unique dynamic. Oh, man, I love that. That was so cool. One of my favorite things that Sid would do is the fist bump on the way to the ring for fans. That was like so contagious. I can't believe nobody else has done that since. As KE775 says, Sid's July 96 through April 97 was fantastic, coming back in July, beating Bulldog at SummerSlam 96, Vader October 96, Shawn Survivor Series 96, Bret Hart 96, main eventing Rumble, and Mania 13. And it's so wild how he was just gone for the first like 6 months of 96. And I'm looking back and I'm like, if that were today, WCW would have snatched him up immediately and put him like in the NWO storyline. Can't believe they didn't. I don't know what kind of deal he had then, but it was just wild because he would complete these like main event level programs and then he hit the bricks for like 6 months and you wouldn't see him. Like he was just gone. After Mania, he didn't do like anything until he showed up, I think, for 1 or 2 matches in June. And then he left again. And he didn't pop up until he showed up, I think, in ECW. And if nobody has seen his ECW stuff, Denim Sid showing up and just whooping ass was incredible. It's just wild to think that, like, in the midst of the Monday Night War, like late 97, all of 98, beginning of 99, like if that were today, both companies would be like, we got to get his ass in here. What are we talking about? This guy was main eventing WrestleMania. They would be trying to make that work. Wild to think about. There was a Sid and Vader tag team, Masters of the Powerbomb. They were so, like, those were the 2 biggest, scariest sons of bitches humanly possible. Denise, I thought Sting was going to die. Legitimately, as a child, I remember being fearful that these 2 men were going to find and kill Sting. Just so horrified by it. And then, of course, there's the funny moments. Like, some intentional, some not intentional, Denise.
Kevin Nash one.
The Kevin Nash one. And then when Kevin Nash is dressed as Sid, oh my God, that was unreal. Of course, Jim Ross, we're live, pal. But one of the intentionally funny ones, Denise, when they crushed his car and he runs and he jumps on it. And he's like, Goldberg, why me? Why me? Oh, Jesus
I just did
Christ.
it like not too long ago. I did like a little look back video and reaction to that. And I was just like laughing so freaking hard because it's the why me? And it's so like so exaggerated, which kind of makes it like really funny to enjoy. But like, that's the thing. And like, I'm jealous because for me, you and I had a totally different experience when it comes to this, because at that time, like I still wasn't watching wrestling in those early years. Like, you know, in 96, 97, like I didn't start watching wrestling until like late 99. And, you know, 2000, 2001 was when I really started getting like into it. So a lot of the stuff that I saw was not live. It was on, you know, replay. It was on, you know, best of moments. And that's how I saw, you know, so many wrestlers, right? But that's a good thing in a way, because it's certain people that, you know, had great moments that you cared enough to be like, okay, well, I'm going to watch this because I know I should probably, you know about this. And that's sort of how like I, you know, learned about, you know, Sycho Sid and seeing all of his moments from back in the day. And I always talk about this all the time, but like WCW is always playing in my effing house. Like literally, believe it or not, like that's all you see on this television when you walk into this house. It's on a freaking loop. So all of those moments have sort of just like been like embedded in my head. But you also mentioned like the ECW, like having him in ECW. And it's crazy because, you know, the ECW fans, Sean, they didn't like anything WWE related, or, you know, like even with WCW and all of that. And the fact that he went out there and he got a reaction that almost made it seem like, I don't know, like a freaking Bret Hart was showing up or something. Like that was the reaction that he, you know, got. And so, I don't know, it just goes to say that presence does a whole lot.
Now, I know that we've got a lot of younger viewers that, quite frankly, never really saw anything of Sid. Please go back and just see what a force this guy was. But there's a lot of people asking about, like, the softball thing, by the way. So it was a running joke that Sid would disappear in the summer and go play softball. That's why I said, like, it's shocking that he was out of action. But, like, this guy saw so many resets. Like, he was a top guy in WCW in like 1991. It's just unbelievable how he was there. And then that summer he was gone. And you're like, well, where the hell is he? After El Gigante wrote him off. Well, maybe he was playing some baseball. He shows up in WWF and he's debuted as like a newer guy and works into the program with Hogan, obviously. I mean, listen, this dude had a couple of major WrestleMania matches, working Hulk Hogan, working The Undertaker in a main event. But he did like his original run in WWF was not very long. He was out of there by April. He was long gone, coincidentally, before the summer of 93 or summer of 92, and he just vanished for a year. He was just gone. And this is my recollection as a kid. Shows back up, and again, he was on there for the Shockmaster debut.
Oh, yeah.
And when you listen, you can hear him say stuff like, "Oh God, I told you," like things
Didn't
like
he say
that.
like, "Oh shit" or something?
I think so. He
Yeah.
was more incredulous than anybody else. But that run in '93 ended in October, and it's like, well, where the hell's Sid? He was gone for another year, popped back up, and had to start from scratch by being Shawn Michaels' bodyguard. But then they made him a top guy again by turning on Shawn Michaels, and he did the feud with Diesel. He did the $1 Million Corporation thing for a little while, helped 1-2-3 Kid turn, vanished again, came back, did his top guy run in WWF, vanished again, came back to ECW, did his WCW run, and then very unfortunately, he had that just horrific injury that it's a miracle that man walked comfortably, much less wrestled again, Denise. And he did. And one of my fondest memories was the Heath Slater spot in 2012 when they were leading to Raw 1000. And Heath Slater said he was the master and ruler of the world. This was during a very terrible crowd era for WWE. They did not give him the respect he deserved. But that man was out there at like late 40s, early 50s after a double compound fracture, power bombing another grown man. Man, bless him, dude. Like that guy, I don't know if there's a more perfect looking pro wrestler. And Terry Allen Jr. says the Sid theme is very nice. And betraying Shawn. Yeah, the Shawn Michaels betrayal was so good. I know that those power bombs he did got ragged on at the time, but I loved it because Shawn Michaels was like over rotating for them. So Sid would power bomb him, and Shawn Michaels would completely flip to the point where he would almost land on his feet as well. Vanessa, good friend of the show. Good to see you here. Sorry I'm late, but I'm present with her little peach emojis. Didn't watch Raw because I was watching the Indiana Fever versus Atlanta Dream. Listen, good stuff there. Glad to see Caitlin Clark emerge relatively healthy. Says, I'm here for y'all. R.I.P. Sid. Well, thank you for stopping by, Vanessa. We really appreciate you. Day says, continuing from the watch along, today's Kiki Palmer and Macaulay Culkin's birthday and National Dog and Toilet Paper Day. Well, you know Denise is celebrating National Toilet Paper Day. R.I.P. Sid. Love you, Denise and Sean. Well, thank you so much. Get in your super chats. Get in your humper chats. We would greatly appreciate it. We want to hear from you guys. Will said, I love wherever Sid went. He was crazy over. Not just crazy over, he was crazy as well, Denise.
Yeah,
like
there you go.
All of it. His man was a little mental on there. It's just wild for me to think that in any wrestling landscape, that guy took 6 months to a year off 3 times in a decade, and companies were just like, yeah, because he had his controversies, the Arn Anderson thing, and there was the squeegee and the squirrel where he made a bet with Brian Pillman that he couldn't keep a squirrel, a pet squirrel or ferret in his pants for an amount of time, and it bit him on the leg. I don't know
that one.
That's the rumor, and I don't think that Sid ever dispelled it.
Wait, what animal? What animal was the keeping?
I think it was a squirrel or a ferret.
And Sid had to keep it in his pants.
That was the rumor.
Okay, I don't know that one.
And then Sid got mad at Brian Pillman and came after him with a squeegee. that is one of the most fascinating men in the history of wrestling. A history of wrestling. Sean, can you recommend anything to watch of Sid? Okay, listen. Per se, Sid is not going to have a lot of Matt classics.
It's more so like moments and stuff. Yeah, it's more moments.
It's moments.
Feuding with Sting, of course, the Shawn Michaels stuff.
Yes, feuding with Sting, of course. He was a part of the 92 Rumble, albeit one of the less great parts of that Rumble. But the Shawn Michaels match was very good. He had the cage match against Brett that was good. There was an October 95 match against Brett that was also good. Really, all of his stuff with Brett was really good. He had a lot of good ones there. The Survivor Series match in 95, it was the wild card. That was such a fun match. It was Ahmed, Shawn Michaels, who were baby faces, teaming with Sid and the British Bulldog, who were heels, against Dean Douglas, Owen Hart, and Yokozuna, who were heels, and Razor Ramon, who was a baby face. That was a lot of fun. Sid was really good in like multi-man matches. There was the Sid, Shawn Michaels, Ahmed versus Camp Cornette match as well, which was really dope. And then the War Games match, which I think Flying Brian almost got power bombed out of his soul there as well. But man, it's just also, you know what? The Steiner brothers match, I liked it. The one against the Twin Towers. I know a lot of people, it's kind of polarizing, but I really liked that. I liked that one. Oh, man. Ryan Sully sends a very generous super chat, says, hey, SRS, Denise, RIP Sid. I've only attended a couple PPVs, PLEs in my lifetime. One of them was Mania 13, which Sid wrestled the main event. Gone too soon. Your 5-year Raw post-show anniversary is coming up soon on September 16, Denise. Party after Raw. We should throw a party on that day.
I was going to say, are we even going to be on that show together, you and I?
Yeah,
you said you were going to be gone a day. Okay, September
I'll be
16th.
gone the next week. And yeah, I'll be gone the next week. Ryan.
I got to put this on my calendar.
Thank you so much. Look at this. Somebody says, Denise sell out from Wrestling Observer. Wait, she was here first.
I've been with the Observer for almost the exact same amount at 4 years. I've been with Fightful for 5 years, and I've been with the Observer for 4 years. This is nothing new, guys.
Right. She is what we call a freelancer, guys, because responsible outlets, when you don't have them hired full time, don't care when their staff works elsewhere, because it's weirdo shit to say, hey, I'm not paying you a full-time wage, but don't work anywhere. Well, granted, I had a few of those in my days. And Denise, you know what? Dare I say, Denise, you're probably a major reason why a lot of outlets can't do that to people anymore.
I was going to say, I feel like I wasn't like the first, because I don't know everybody, but I was one of the first to like start working in multiple places because, well, people got to pay the rent. Well, I'm talking like wrestling and stuff, you know?
Oh, no, I worked for an outlet before Fightful. And I've been pretty honest about it. I was on food stamps, not being able to afford my rent. I asked them for a raise. They said no. I was working at other outlets and they tried to say, no, you can't do that. And then I said, all right, I'm going to be looking for other places to work. And for any editor of any kind of outlet, unless you pay your staff a full-time wage, you do not have say over where they work. As long as they are not and listen, if they are undermining you, well, then guess what? They can go work that other place. But I think that's lame shit to try to prohibit people from working elsewhere.
Exactly. And anyways, I mean, I could go on a rant about that for like a whole hour, but I'm not gonna.
Quite frankly, I want people that listen to you on Busted Open or Observer to be like, you know what? I like her. Let me go listen to her on Mondays as well over at Fightful.
It happens all the time. Like there's people that will discover Fightful or whatever, like vice versa. It goes every direction, or from Fightful to this person to that person. Like it just works.
Yeah. K775 says, I believe he's supposed to feud with Warrior in 92 after Mania 8. However, Warrior got fired a second time. You know what? I would like to put together something that is like a what was Sid supposed to do before he left for softball all those times?
That would be kind of cute. Yeah.
Patrick says, Sid Udy for Hall of Fame, long overdue. What are some of your favorite Sid matches? Going to watch Wrestle War Games match after this. Also, fuck bitch ass Billy Batty. Well, also, yes, I agree. Sid would probably say the same. But yeah, the 91 War Games is by far the best match he had anything to do with, unless you count the Royal Rumble as well. I mean, that's by far the best one. But listen, like, I enjoyed the antics of Sid. That's what I liked. That's what I was there for. It was the character elements, and you mentioned it best, Denise, the aura. The man had aura to like such a different level of everybody else. He just looked.
I can't even think of someone who kind of has that energy right now.
Yeah. A moment, I'll tell you a match that is near and dear to my heart. Marty Jannetty was like my favorite wrestler as a kid. And he main evented Raw with Sid late 95. And that one was cool for me because it was two of my favorite performers at the time. But if I had to throw out a couple more matches, Davey Boy and Sting against Vader and Sid. Rick Rude and Sid against Dustin Rhodes and Ric Flair was a lot of fun. Yeah, those are probably a couple I would go with.
Do you think that they'll induct him to the Hall of Fame maybe this coming year? And this is next one?
I hope so, and he should have been in there before. He should have been in there well before, and that's why they need to get off their asses with a lot of that stuff, man.
I was actually reading this quote from an interview that he had just done last month, and it kind of sucks even worse because it was just last month, but he was on the Attitude Era podcast, and he was asked about that, and he had said that, you know, now that Vince is gone, there's a more chance for him for that to happen. But it makes me sad to think that he, was already going through this and probably knew that he didn't have much time, and maybe kind of, it would have been nice for him to get that Hall of Fame moment, at some point way before.
I mean, listen, if anybody from WWE happens to be watching this, put Demolition in the Hall of Fame while we still have them. Put Lex Luger in the Hall of Fame. Put these people in. Like, let them have their moment. Let them have their flowers. If it means something to them, let them have that for what they gave to you and what they gave to us. J.M. Miller just says, oh my God, what happened to my car? Goldberg. Jason says, first time I see Sid on my TV is when he was part of the Skyscrapers. It was Skyscrapers, not Twin Towers. That's what I was thinking of. With Dan Spivey working with the Road Warriors, that was a war. Oh, yeah. Big, meaty men slapping meat. George Moore says, the Millennium Man had some pretty good moments in his second run in WCW. R.I.P., one of the best big men ever. I'll share a moment right now that I love. They did this Goldberg feud with Sid, and the whole thing was he wanted to beat Goldberg's streak. And you would watch, and like as a kid, I was such a stickler for everything making sense. So here I am, like 9, 10 years old watching this, and I'm like, wait a second. He doesn't have that many wins. I read all the house show results. I was like a little 10, 11-year-old reading the house show results. I was like, he doesn't have this many. They're like 50 wins in a month. But then they started to lean into that. And Sid would just show up and powerbomb people. And every time he powerbombed somebody, he would count it as like 3 wins. So that's how he was racking up his wins. He would just show up backstage, find a luchador, powerbomb him into a table, and he's like, that's 5 more wins.
You know what?
I love that.
It's also a sign that you should have known you were going to be in this wrestling reporter business game. And then you're like, I don't know, these facts ain't, the math ain't mathing on these.
Listen, I was making sure everybody defended their titles within 30 days. I was on DDTdigest.com.
At 9 years old?
Oh my God. As a little kid, I was probably like 10, 11, but I was a little kid reading DDTdigest.com. That was my shit, man. I loved it. We got Rasselstat saying my favorite Sid memory is when I almost legit T-boned his car at a parking lot for a WCW house show. The fun part, his passenger was Rick Steiner, who he was facing in the main event that night. Much love to the big man. Indeed. Now, we are going to talk more about Sid on the hump this week. I'm sure Jimmy will have his thoughts as well. But I want to thank you all for understanding. Like, listen, Sid was a major part of my fandom. I mentioned earlier this year how important Sting was to me, and man, Sid was as well. And I love these big sons of bitches that we had in wrestling in the 1990s. And you know what? I think there were a couple fellas tonight that did them
I
very,
was about
very
to say
proud.
this is the night for big meaty men,
Did
honoring.
them very proud.